Well, that since the last time you and I talked, the CPI and the PPI both came out, and the CPI was much lower than anybody expected. And the PPI was actually negative. There was actually deflation in commodities. And so all of a sudden, it seems like inflation is, and you and I have talked about this. There are so many recession indicators out there that we would expect lower inflation and maybe even deflation in the year ahead.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to Watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. John Rubino is with us. John, I just came back. I got to share with you this. Just came back. I was in LA for a conference in Woodland Hills, which was pretty Tony neighborhood. And I mean, I could not believe, like right in the center of town, there's a homeless encampment. They're supposedly building the LA Rams training center there, but they got ghost malls, they got ghost buildings that have been empty for 10 years. Remember that electronics chain Fry's, which was a marvelous chain, the best chain out there, way better than any of the big boxes now. That's been empty for about 10 years. I just could not believe. And then I go to the airport. All right, I no like newcomer to the drug scene, but in front of the airport last night as I'm leaving, or the night before, there's like people all over the place smoking marijuana in front of the airport. John, what is the world coming to here?
Well, you know what? Maybe that's where they put all the San Francisco homeless people when they cleared them out just lately for President Xi to come visit. So yeah, because I mean, they're somewhere. So maybe they just dumped them in some other homeless encampment. So you saw double the normal number, but California is a nightmare. Gavin Newsom is very likely going to be the Democrat nominee this time around, or possibly, not guaranteed, but
I think possibly, good possibility.
Yeah, but he's so easy to run against. All you need to do is run video of California right now, almost random video. You don't even have to curate it or anything. Just drive down the street and post the video and then say, do you want this guy running the country? And that seems like that's all you would have to do.
Oh, man, I'm like all for legalizing, liberalizing all these drug laws. It's a mental health issue. It's not a criminal issue, but because the cost gets so high, people have to steal to support their habit. It becomes a criminal justice issue. But in places like even New Jersey and numerous other states, the deal is you got to go for treatment if you get arrested for crime. And if you don't, then they'll send you to jail. This is what we need for the rest of the country. You get arrested for drug crimes, whatever, or you're a criminal because you're involved in drugs, you need mandatory treatment, get off of it. And, it's doable, but there's no will to do it,
Have you had Michael Schellenberger on your show? Because he wrote a book about this called San Francisco. San Francisco. Yeah, and that's basically the conclusion that he comes to in that book is that most of the people on the streets are drug addicted or mentally ill, and therefore you can't fix their lives by giving them a little apartment or something like that. That
the rent's not too damn high. That's not the cause of it, huh?
No. He actually said the idea of the normal middle class person who loses their job and ends up on the street is a myth. Yeah, that's not what's there. And so you basically have to have some kind of what a liberal person might call coercive. There has to be some kind of coercion involved in here, where there's some behavior that's expected, and if they don't behave in that way, then there's a consequence. And so we'll see. I think it's a self-correcting thing, luckily, because different states have different policies, so we know what works and what doesn't. And
could not agree more.
Yeah, and the guys who implement what doesn't work just get kicked out of office. Hopefully, at some point.
That used to happen. Once upon a time that happened, but now they get kicked up for higher office, right?
Yeah, you just move them up to president or senate or something like that.
I mean, look at our president now. He was basically a failed politician, and he failed his way to success.
The the way it's happening now is that people are voting with their feet in states. They're moving out of states that are badly run and into states that are perceived as being well run. And there's a nasty side effect to that, which it leaves all the people who like the way the badly run states are being run at home to vote, and the people who don't like it leave. So you don't get any pressure on the mayors and the governors to do a better job, because they get reelected no matter what. So anyhow, that's a long, that's a whole process. Session's worth of
processo, un processo. So okay, but in the meantime, we got plenty of issues here. So what's with inflation? It just disappeared. Happy days are here again. Rates are going lower. And pretty soon, before you know it, banks will start making loans again. Who could believe that could happen?
Well, you know that since the last time you and I talked, the CPI and the PPI both came out, and the CPI was much lower than anybody expected. And the PPI was actually negative. There was actually deflation in commodities. And so all of a sudden, it seems like inflation is, and you and I have talked about this, there are so many recession indicators out there that we would expect lower inflation and maybe even deflation in the year ahead. And that's starting to kind of play out. And so the question is it good for the stock market? Because stocks rocketed on this. We had this big relief rally.
Yeah.
And
huge rally.
The implication, well, disinflation is good for stocks. When the inflation rate is positive but declining, stocks usually go up. But deflation is bad for stocks when prices actually go down. And I kind of think that that's what we're going to see in the next year, just because there's so many really major signs of weakness out there. In Zero Hedge today, they just said that the index of leading economic indicators went down for like the 16th month in a row. Those are things that point towards future economic activity, the things that make up that index. And there's all kinds of other things that you and I've talked about that indicate recession is coming. So if it's
not here already,
if they don't go back and revise everything and say, oh, it started in October, which is usually the way it works and the way it could work this time, but that's not good for stocks, because an actual recession, especially if there's deflation during the recession, really lowers corporate earnings, and that's bad for stock prices. And it's bad for the banks, and it also blows up a lot of the leveraged speculating community. There are huge sections of the financial world that can't function in deflation. They need inflation and interest rates to be doing what they're supposed to do, and instead of just plunging. So you end up with lower corporate earnings, falling stock prices, and then a bunch of crises that governments have to step in and bail out. And I kind of think that's what's coming based on a lot of these indicators. So this relief rally was probably kind of delusional, and it's probably going to be reversed out pretty soon. That would be my prediction for the next few months.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. That's for sure. I mean, it's definitely we're at a real pivotal point here. We don't know what's going to happen, but if these banks don't turn around fast, I don't see how that's going to help. And kudos to you for that great article in Zero Hedge today by you. And we'll put a link in the show notes to that about inflation just up and disappearing.
Yeah, it's nice when Zero Hedge picks up your stuff. That's that site is a giant compared to most of the regular sites out there. So it's very cool to see that happen once in a while.
Hey, so going back to the recession phenomena, the leading economic indicators down for the 19th straight month. How do we not have a recession now? How is there not a recession?
Well, there have been all kinds of indicators like that. Like, remember how long the yield curve was inverted for? And it didn't cause a crash or anything. So there's a lot of stuff out there that, the indicator happens, but the economy doesn't follow along the way it has historically done. And there are reasons for that. And one of them is all those stimmy checks from trillion. We basically said, okay, you don't have to go into work. So you stay home and work from home. You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to
Or
pay
your
any money on
mortgage.
your student loans. Yeah, or your mortgage or your student loans. And then we're going to send you checks at least every few months. So people ended up accumulating what they call excess savings. And they've been spending those excess savings for the last couple of years. And that's kept the economy going when a lot of those indicators said that it shouldn't anymore. The yield curve goes inverted. So what? We've got plenty of money. And now people have used up their excess savings, but they're putting everything on plastic. So credit card debt is soaring, which is another negative indicator. When you get $1 trillion of credit card debt and rocketing delinquencies on credit cards, then consumer spending has to decline, because all of those people who are now having to pay on their student loans, but they're already maxed out on their credit cards, they're not going to go out to Costco and spend $500 this weekend. It's just not going to happen. So that's another recession indicator and possibly deflation indicator of many.
Yeah, of many, for sure. And you just it's this living in this world of illusion, of delusion, because I think the argument is there quite persuasively that we've been having a recession for the past year. It's just that some of the traditional indicators tend to lag anyway. And real estate's been good. The job numbers have been okay, so we hang our hat on that. But the reality is, if you just printed money and nobody had to do anything, it would look even better.
Yeah. Oh, the modern monetary theory thing would look great for the first few years if we just printed money and gave it to everybody, cut everybody's taxes, and stopped borrowing money and just financed the government with newly printed currency. That would work until
for a while.
Until inflation spiked and the dollar tanked, because that's the logical conclusion of a process where you just finance yourself with newly created currency. So, we kind of did that, really.
Yeah.
And we got a pretty good economy out of it, at least in terms of headline numbers.
Superficially.
But, you mentioned real estate. And what was the other thing you mentioned? Something else the labor markets.
Yeah.
And both of them under the surface are horrendous. The headline numbers are okay, but, in the labor market, you get these big job numbers now. And then after the number comes out and everybody gets excited about it, people dig into it and say, oh, 175% of the new jobs were part-time. That means we're losing full-time jobs. At the same time, people are having to take on, third jobs in order to make ends meet. That's not a good jobs number after all. But by that time, everybody saw the headline number and came to their conclusion, and same thing with real estate.
Yeah.
Home prices are elevated still. But the reason they're elevated is because nobody's willing to sell, because the mortgage rates are so high now that if you sell a house with a 3% mortgage and you have to take on an 8% mortgage to buy your next house, that doesn't work for you, But
exactly the case. Your mortgage, your low rate, cut rate mortgage has become a major asset, but it's also become a millstone around your neck, because if you need to finance your next home, it's going to cost you double, and you'll buy half the house. It'll wind up costing you the same. Why bother moving?
It's like a rent-controlled apartment in New York City, isn't it? You get it? You never leave. You're 96 years old. You're still walking up those stairs to that rent-controlled apartment. So I think that's true with a lot of houses now that are, McMansions. They're completely inappropriate for the 69-year-old baby boomers living there, because they've got 3 stories and the boomers have bad knees, but they can't leave, Yeah. So I think there are 3 big sources of homes for sale inventory coming pretty soon. And when they come, it's going to be a deluge. And that is the boomers, who are going to finally have to sell because they can't get upstairs anymore. And the Airbnb guys, who are terrified that the other Airbnb guys are going to sell a bunch of their inventory and push prices down. So they're going to start selling. And then the Wall Street guys, who bought up entire neighborhoods at bubble prices. And they're going to behave like Wall Street always behaves when they figure out they're in the wrong asset class. They're going to just sell everything at whatever and just take the losses. So we'll see a lot of private equity companies go bankrupt and
Yes.
dump their inventory. And so those neighborhoods that got bought out for 20% over the market are now going to be sold at 40% under the market. So, housing is going to crash. There's just no way around it. All that inventory.
And we've already seen commercial crash. That's a basket case with no end in sight. Hey, so Bitcoin is up over $37,000. I got to admit, I've been buying it. I've been making some money on it because I would just buy some every Monday, and then it would hit a price target. I'd sell it, and then I'd begin the process over again. And once a week, I would buy X amount of Bitcoin, and it's been a nice little run up there.
Well, those ETFs are finally coming that people have been talking about for such a long time, and when a physical ETF comes into a market, it's usually really beneficial for stock prices, like or for the commodities price.
Yeah,
that happened. The GLD gold ETF came out back in the day when gold was much lower, but then it bought a bunch of inventory and got everybody excited, and gold had a nice run. And same thing with uranium. Mm-hmm. And so as I understand it, the new Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs are going to come in, and they'll do the same thing. They will buy a bunch of those coins and take them, at spot, and take them off the market. So people are excited about that prospect. Oh, and the other thing that's nice about these ETFs is it lets normies buy the thing. Like I don't know how to buy Bitcoin myself. I wouldn't know what to do if you told me go out and buy some Bitcoin right now. But when that ETF hits the market, I'll know exactly what to do. I'll just go buy. I'll pull up that ticker and I'll hit send or hit buy, and that'll be that. So I think a lot more buying will come into the Bitcoin market for sure. And it will probably pull up the other cryptocurrencies. So I think that this is, other things being equal, good for cryptos. And it might not be equal. Like there might be huge deflationary crash right now that sucks Bitcoin and Ethereum and gold and silver all down with it. But just other things being equal, that's probably why cryptos are going up right now.
I think you could be right. Hey, and miracle of all miracles, Argentina just elected a libertarian. I didn't know that you could spell libertarian in Espanol, but evidently you can.
Yeah, something to do with libertad, right? You have to just,
a little thing like freedom. I didn't think anybody cared about that anymore.
Well, this guy sounds like a cross between Ron Paul and Donald Trump, because he's really emphatic. And, being like Ron Paul, he wants to close down the central bank, but he also wants to make abortion illegal from the top down, national law. And he wants to close down a long list of government bureaucracies, and he wants to cut welfare spending. So, you toss all that together, and that, some of those policies are conservative. Some of them are populist, and some of them are libertarian. So it's going to be fun to watch. But
he could always move to Chile after this fails, right?
Well, Chile was the closest thing to a libertarian country that we had out there for a really long time.
And Hong Kong,
and Hong Kong got taken over by China, so it's no longer that. And
forget that.
Chile had a very free market economy because of the legacy of Pinochet.
Right.
And so, it wasn't all a good thing the way it happened. But Pinochet left Chile with a relatively constrained public sector, relatively low taxes, relatively clean regulations. And so Chile was a very successful country for a long time. Now they're kind of backsliding into socialism, but who knows? We'll see. It's nice to see Latin America leading the way in that direction for once, because usually they're pulling in the other direction a lot of the time. They swing between dictatorship and socialist dictatorship, military dictatorship and socialist dictatorship, and they never find that happy medium. And Chile was kind of that for a while. So maybe Argentina will end up being that too. That would be nice. And in any event, it's going to be fun.
It would be like a block of, maybe Argentina going back to libertarian things would be enough of a push to get Chile to go back as well. And then you would have the entire southern tip of South America. Plus, you could kind of throw Uruguay in there to some extent, not truly libertarian, but not like the rest of the world either. So then you'd have 3 major South American countries. And then if it worked, it could become the basis of a movement, right?
It could. I mean, that's hoping for a lot in this world, because so much of the bad stuff that's happening out there is being blamed on capitalism, which means a lot of people vote socialist because they perceive the problems to be caused by capitalism. But I wouldn't call what's happening in the world today capitalism.
No, it's capitalism.
Yeah,
right?
It's an oligarchy in the U.S., which is, it's as close to fascism as it is to actual free market capitalism, because it's basically a partnership now between big corporations and bloated governments.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, that partnership is, censorious. They do not want free speech. They don't want competition. And they don't want clean elections. So, that's not our view of capitalism.
No.
And so, I think that the best thing we could do in the US right now would be aggressive antitrust, where we go in and say, okay, Goldman Sachs, from now on, you're 5 smaller banks. JP Morgan Chase, 12 smaller banks. And Pfizer, right down the line. You just go into these industries that are run by just a handful of big companies and break them up. That's normally perceived to be a left-wing policy.
Yeah.
But I think, because it is, well, so you could get right-wing populists and socialists to agree on that policy, and maybe you get 51% of the vote out of that coalition. So it's conceivable that that the populists and the socialists get together for that one issue, and then anti-war too. Once they're together, they can look at the other things they agree on and say, all right, and we're going to close down the military empire. So. Again, that's asking for a lot of today's world, but it's a fantasy. It's a nice fantasy if it could happen,
That's like hope and change, man. I don't know about that one, but all for it. If they can pull it off, I support it wholeheartedly. Hey, so China and Saudi Arabia, central banks sign a currency swap agreement. I'll give you my take on it. It doesn't mean anything because you got China with a crashing currency. Everything's crashing in China. It's just a matter of time till Three Gorges Dam takes everything out.
Well, yeah, China is not the super powerful monolith that it seemed like it was for a long time, because they've got a major financial crisis going right now, and they've got a demographic collapse. It looks like their population is shrinking and aging at the same time, so they're not going to be a manufacturing powerhouse in the same sense that they were for the past 20 years, So, you're right. Just because China makes a deal with somebody else, it doesn't mean what it might have meant at one time. But what a currency swap means between countries is that, what's the Saudi currency? Is it Rial? No.
No, I don't remember.
I don't know what the Saudi's currency is. Okay, but anyhow, China and Saudi Arabia give each other, or they buy each other's currencies.
Right.
So then they've got some of the other countries' currency on hand, and they can use that to buy stuff from that country without having to swap into dollars in order to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's a form of de-dollarization, and it's a real thing in the sense that henceforth Saudi Arabia will be selling oil to China for yuan, and
they don't know what to do with those yuan, but they'll have them. Yeah.
Well, yeah. See, that's the thing. You got to have something you can do with that currency once you get it, and that's the problem with, for instance, Russia and India cutting these bilateral trade deals, because Russia will sell oil or natural gas to India, and they'll get rupees back, but they can't buy anything with the rupees that they want. So that deal is not working for them. And that's part of the rationale for that gold-backed BRICS currency everybody was talking about for a little while.
Everyone talked about it for a week, and now we're on to this.
Yeah. But, it's the same process that's being worked out.
It's going to happen. I don't mean to say dollar supremacy forever. We pretty much abused that position of trust. So the world will have to find an alternative. And we want the world to find an alternative because it's doing more harm than good to the United States in so many ways. The unlimited deficit spending, the unlimited military industrial expansion, complex expansion, all that as a result of the abuse of our trust of the world's reserve currency. But hey, this is just another step along the path. Going to be interesting to see what happens. In any event, that is it for today. Make sure you go over to John's Substack. It's rubino.substack.com. Link in the show notes, along with a link to your superb article, John, about inflation disappearing that appeared on Zero Hedge today that tens of thousands of you out there have been reading. Hey, if you've got any questions or comments, email kl@kerrylutz.com. Site financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for your free newsletter. John, we'll catch up to you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Kerry. See ya.